Okay, this is my combat build for a Hunter Ranger, and it's really combat, not archery, for mod 18B. That's what we're going to call it, whatever they try to call it. Let's pray here, and we'll get into the reason for that. First, I just want to go into current playability and my character and whatever I do, and the way I've got him set up. I've had a few people asking on a couple of my old videos and for an upgrade and everything, and why not do it all at once? So here's my character, and I guess we'll go over his gear and go straight through it that way. He's wearing the Twilight Hood, Trapper's Twilight Hood, which gives you a 5% increase in power for 10 seconds after you kill somebody. This works real good, especially in mobs. It really doesn't do anything versus a boss, and if he's a solo, it doesn't have very many ads. Like when we were doing Tom, I used a different hood there, and he still has the ebony stain hide on. There's real no better way, so I've still got a low level hide jacket on there, and spike defender vimbraces I've put on here, and added a power patch to it. And it's the one where you gain damage resistance whenever you strike an enemy, and it stacks up to 5 times DR. But when you are struck by him, the stacks are consumed and you gain 1% damage back at him per stack consumed for 10 seconds. So, thinking that into play here, I actually took off the underwear that I was wearing that gives you the, if you don't scooch around or move or use that effect, then keep your stamina up, that you keep a damage bonus going. Well, looking at it, anyhow, in the newest dungeon, there's so many places you don't want to stand and you have to get out of and try to get a hit in and then move and things like that. And you'll see some of my gameplay here in a minute, that I thought this might be a better choice, but what I have to do is come in and try to not get hit the first few hits, and it doesn't take many. I'll show you how quickly I go through my hit. Every hit counts. He's got the Lionheart bow on, and let's see, what have I done on modifications? It's on penetrating arrows, so that's single attack on my melee attacks for my trigger attack that's on it. I thought about putting it on the other one, but I've still got it active, but I haven't done it. And that would be for more all mobs, but you have bosses and things, and the current bosses needed extra damage, and I've just left it this way. I've got crit severity on it, of course, here, and I've got crit strike on here, and I can at this point take this off and put it back into power or something along that line, and there's lots of choices here. I've got pretty much everything open. I can even go back for more health. 2,000 power might give me a little bit more damage, but really not that much. Thought about putting it in accuracy, and this is a stat that really gives you 2,500 maximum. You have to re-roll it a bunch of times. You never hit 25, but you can get close. Like I got 2468, and use that towards finding stats. And we'll look at my stats here in a minute. And then the boots, I've got the new Glutton's boots on that are rusted iron leggings that have Glutton's Might, and it increases my damage by 5%, but it ruins my incoming healing. So I've ended up putting a couple of these tacticals on. They're ranked 13, and so it gives me 4.8% for each one, and tries to get back to it. All of my other slots in defense are having brutals now, and as you build up your character, you're going to have raw defenses in there, and you may eventually be able to get them back to brutals. And by brutals, it's a little bit less defense, so if you go over on your defense, then you can put a brutal in that slot, and it'll take away half that defense and give you more hit points. Hit points becomes real needy. I still have some dark enchantments on, and each one is adding up and giving me companion influence, which still adds a damage bonus and things like that going on. Radiance in every slot that I can put straight radiance in, and again, brutals. And there's a crit strike that I had to put in here at 15, and it's a 15 too, so I kind of wanted to keep it, but I could put on another character, and it allowed my defense to hit the right point here in doing so. Although I didn't have to do it that way, I could have done it with the other stat off my weapon and so on like that. It has a defense too. And again, darks, not to go crazy on this there, but brutals on defense, radiant, On here is a dark and another brutal. There are radiant radiants, and this is the only two 14s I have offensively on my character left. For everything else is 15 radiants, as you see here. There's another in here, and then I have one Tenebris on me at rank 14, and I've thought about putting it to 15 for it gives me a little more. It goes from 22,000 damage, I think, to 26,000 damage whenever it procs. Okay, but one thing that's been holding me off of that is that I turned off the companion that it helps proc off of, the owlbear. He procs one extra time on it too, and just by having that, not having that on, it kind of makes a bit of a difference. I'm only at 2146 item level on this guy, and he could get higher, but I really don't think I could get much damage, and some of that little bit higher would be putting on or getting to 14s to 15s and so on like that. I put his major stats all in strength and dex, and across the board really, so I've got 32 strength and 27 dex, and that adds, of course, dex adds to your movement speed, which helps me out a little bit, but critical severity is real important, so it's maxed out as where it could. Would I change these two numbers around if I could? Possibly so, but strength ends up giving me physical damage boost also, and I have physical damage boost in every one of my regular hits, and then my binding hits and my off hit swing have magical hits inside of them, points of it, and that's helped, I believe, by intelligence. So I've got it at 15, and I've thought about putting a point or two into it, and I've seen people that put max points in that and try to find it in other ways. I'm just showing you the way that I found to do so. Raw, I sit here at 363,000 hit points, 170 power, and I know that could go higher in some ways, but I'm hitting all the numbers that I should be hitting and got about max what I could. Other characters are able to get some higher numbers and points, and if you have the exact right companions, but this is the way I'm doing it. Armor penetration's at 85, defense, critical strikes a little bit over, but that's also with me having my potions on and everything, which doesn't really add to crit strike that much, and I have about 2,000 points I can play with, which is just not quite enough for me to take those other stats out of it, which is sitting at 2468. It puts me under. You follow me, right? And if anybody takes a death hit or anything and I lose my potions and stuff, then I fall under, and it's better just to leave that up there so my crit stays, at least the one death hit and so on. Got a touch in crit avoidance at 56. Accuracy is at 84, so it's right there at 85. I could change that and deviate it, but it's so close in the percentage, it doesn't really need to have any more. In combat setting, 135, 430, so I'm barely getting over. So what I have down here is I've got a control bonus at 9.9. My AP up is 8.7, almost, so close to 10% AP damage that I'm getting extra, or AP gain that I'm getting towards getting my daily. Companion influence is breaking 50. Got some good movement speed going on. Incoming healing is lacking a hair, but that's because of wearing those new boots, but I've got that offset with the Tenebris, and I have the other helmet that I put on that has the other one on there. And I've got pretty good stamina regeneration still, but there's no reason for me to really hearken towards that if I don't wear the underwear that gives you the boost with it. My crit severity standing now, and I haven't put anything on, so it's 125 straight. If I was to put on the coin that gives me crit severity type thing, the pet, the bunny type thing that you pet, hamster, that's what it is, boo, and put on the other two potions and my crit severity potion there, I can get to 152, but I've opted out of doing that right now for let's see if I need to look at any other stats. Oh yeah, so my magical bonus is 3.8, but I get an 8-point regular physical damage bonus, right? And so reason I haven't done so is right down here you can see, where's my pointer thing at? Oh really? Oh, here it is. So right down here you can see there's a horn and there's another horn on there, and so me so horny. What I've ended up doing is adding a secondary horn that I got, and it gets my stat back. There's some people that do this, like Scourge Warlocks and so on, because it clicks your action points, and it's something that you get a whole lot of damage out of. And most of the hunter's damage you don't get that much out of in ones, but then there's one proc that you can do, and it gives you a damage boost of extra magical damage. So I've got that in there during a certain point of your damage run. And so to be able to have that horn there, that horn will give me back basically about 80% of my action point bar, the little thing here in the middle that lets me do it. And you have to be above 50% to ever use it, which is convenient. It doesn't have to be full for you to use it because it only uses 50%. So all you got to do is clock over, and you can hit one of those horns, and as it's going away and you're doing damage, it comes back over 50 again, and you can roll it. And if you start off like this and use it and get to a certain point and no damage is coming, you can throw out your horn and then start doing it, and it'll clock you back up, and you can utilize it whenever you want to. There are strategies that I use whenever I'm fighting, and it depends. Like right here, the reason I'm here in Dread Ring, and we're here in Dread Ring, and the reason I'm here is because this is one of the places that will keep your stats and you're able to fight something. Also, it's a decent ring of guys around here. And so, man, there's so many different facets to fighting, and I'll just try to go over a few of them before I go into a little battle. Right now is Hell Pit. So we'll go into something, and that goes with the current mod that's going on in Avernus, and I'll show you that. So the powers that I use are fairly important, I guess. I use Electric Shot or Clear the Ground, and of course it's Clear the Ground that I'm using in melee stance. And Penetrating Arrows Storm Strike is what I have my extra on. I leave it in my left trigger because that's the one that I can hold on and power through my buttons, and the other one seems to be my off shot, and I think of it that way in my mind, so it works. You can do it any way that you want to. I have Hindering Strike and Hindering Shot, but I'm really only using melee down here at the bottom of the two, and so it's got 400 magnitude. I'm using Marauder's Rush and Marauder's Escape, but Marauder's Rush running into him does 450 and also adds confusion, so you almost get a free hit on somebody that's going to do it. I get Boar Hide and Boar Charge, and even though I throw Boar Hide on every once in a while, every time I switch stance it takes away all my power for about 8 seconds, and I have to build back up because I've got down in my feet, down in here, I've got where I can if I stay in the same stance, it builds up a certain amount of power. Of course, it pegs, though, at that point. And so really I'm using the Board Charging counter, and again, Board Charging counter here is at 450. And so that's your best choices pretty much off of it, and the way that I utilize them. My dailies are Forest Ghosts, and I use that very sparingly. Every once in a while, if I have a good group, like where I was standing just a minute ago and they're around me and I'm fighting them and another group starts coming in, I'll go ahead and hit it so I'm invisible to everybody. You get a free hit on everybody, and I try to get combat advantage and take it off so I don't have to waste a heal block and so on like that. Another thing is Snipe. You can leave that in your second shot if you're doing like solo bosses, things like that, and it gives you an extra shot that you want to do. But because of the power pump and the way that we run through on a hunter, it's actually more valuable for Call of the Storm. For it calls a lightning strike that hits at 330 extra damage, but then you get an extra damage on every shot that you do for basically 10 seconds. And so if you can roll 2 of them off, if you have a horn you can roll off 3, and really if you wait enough time it'll come into 4. But if you have 2 horns you can keep this rolling as if you didn't throw it all the way and have to build all the way back up, if you follow me. It gives you more chance to step into this mode, and so I utilize it. I'm using Seeker's Vengeance because whenever I attack from behind, and then Blade Storm basically. You could use Twin Blade Storm, but it's more than 2 enemies, and while you do fight 3 in mobs quite often, more than 2, and it gives you an additional for area around you, and that works. Basically, without going into every single one of these, I do use Focused, which is where I stay in melee stance, and it gives me that charge up of extra damage. in lieu of the other one, and then everything that goes with it. And what I'm doing is Storm's Recovery, Blade Hurricane, which using a melee encounter power grants me Flurry for 3 seconds, and Flurry causes your melee at-will attacks to deal double damage. So I've got double damage on my melee attacks, and that's just the fingers basically. And I've got Skirmisher's Gambit, so I give up Crit Strike. So that's one of the things I had to fight on my character to get, because it takes away 10,000 of your Crit Strike now that they've changed it and nerfed him, but your crit severity is increased by 25%. So that's what's allowing me to get up there, and that's important for damage. And you use Enhanced Conductivity because Call of the Storm enhances your weapon an additional 50 magnitude on every hit. And you get off quite a few hits on this guy. And so let's look at my companions real quick. And what I've put on to help me get my numbers and so on, I've used Staldor's Presence, which in my offense slot, first one, and it gives me 8,000 combat advantage. That allowed me to not have to fight for that so much. There's a couple of choices I could go through, but I also used a Durgar, and I had the other guy on, which whatever, he's a type of cleric disciple, and he was giving me 6. But this guy gives 8, and he gives 1,500 armor pen, and we went from needing 80,000 to 85. And so in that, I threw this on, and it allowed me to get there a lot quicker and not have to fight for it. I have a few choices here, but I chose the one where I increased the power of my at-will powers by 4%, and it's doubled on strongholds. And he's a legendary. And all these guys are, except for the Durgar. I think he's just, yeah, no, he's legendary too, I think. Or maybe just purple. Anyhow, the your at-wills, if you think about it, the way that this guy attacks, which I'll show you in a second, it makes it down to where he actually is using it most of the time. So this is one of those most of the time. So it's not boosting my encounters, but it's in doing all of my at-wills. And then the Deep Crow's Presence gives me 10,000 power, and I have other choices that I could do. You know, I had a Batiri that I could put on in damage versus bosses, so you could switch that out during a boss, and I haven't upgraded him yet because people are kind of talking crap about it now with meh, you could do that. Also, he's one guy that you could keep out at all time, and he causes a lot of damage. But if I did that with the way I've already done my build, I would have to chase armor pin so much, I would lose basically all those radiance that I have for my power, and my power would fail a whole lot just to get my armor pin back up. There's a few ways you can chase it, and there's even a companion you could get 6,000 off of and try to offset it, but it's not worth doing. And in my eye. And where is the other one? Mercenary, 4,000 power, but 2,000 combat advantage. And I thought about having to, if I had to do that, I would do it. This I can do my owlbear on, and so you get that extra hit. I've basically got it turned off now in the interest of hit points. And I find I do enough damage in regular little stuff and use my dailies and all those type of things. But whenever I even go into a super dungeon, it makes me a little more lax, and I don't have to feel like I can't stand in certain things. I've got enough to where you can just about take any hit points or any shot from somebody and stand in it if you had to, unless I've got a lot of damage on me already and I'm only half, alive or half dead already, and things along that line, right? So he's summoned, so it gives me that, but my bonding stones are all the way up to 15s, and then I have empowereds in each one here. Now I know there's the other one that you can get to put in here that adds to your companion, and people that put on Zuna and things like that are relying on that. And Zuna does an incredible flurry. I mean, if I had her out right now and she would hit all these guys at once and then start a bleed on one and do these things. And it seems pretty effective and kind of OP. And really, if everybody used them, you'd just blister through mobs pretty badly, and it would start bleeds on bosses and everything. But again, I'd have to twist my character quite a bit. And I do have quite a few characters. And really, but the ones that I'm playing actively and trying to keep up to par somewhat are really 5 of them total, and 4 of them really more concentrated. Able to do everything except for this last content. Tom is questionable on my cleric, although I did Lam and so on with her. Same thing with my Pally. And I've taken my Scourged Warlock all the way through it. But let's look at a little bit of how I attack and everything. Let's say there's this group that's here. If they were already right here, that's one thing. But if I'm away from it with this guy, because of my attacks that I have, he gets a lunge attack. And if I'm far enough away, the only one that hits is the little button down here on the left of the two there. And it depends on where you put your buttons. It doesn't matter really on this, but I've ended up putting them slotted across this way effectively, so it gives me a dive in with that or the other one, and then my middle top one is my secondary attack, and I'm using it if I have a mob for sure. And if I have a mob for sure, I'm using this swing attack, which is clear the ground, versus a regular attack, which is solo attack, which goes like this. Now that gets a better damage. This definitely gets better damage solo, and especially on the third attack there, it does a little more wham, and on double attack it does more than the other. And it's like 70 versus 40. But if you think of the fact that whenever I'm swinging extra like this, that's 40 to everybody I'm hitting. So if there's a group, I try to do shots like that. So what I do basically is come in, and then because you get that bonus that's for 3 seconds, I'll hit, and then I do my swing for 3 seconds. And after you get 3 out, then you do another attack, and then you'll do 1, 2, 3, and do another attack, and 1, 2, 3, and do another attack. And this goes with that well, because right after that, whoopsh, and he throws it to the ground, is your secondary attack. So you're basically coming out of that and churning through it. And that's how you really get a lot of damage on these guys. And of course, getting combat advantage and things like that. So basically how I'd come in is I would zoom in like this, and I would start swinging, and you can see I can't get all 4 of them, but I get 3. And then I lay down another 2, 3, and I lay down another, and 2, 3, and go through them like that. In a normal situation with all these 4 guys, whenever you do that, this 4th is going to start coming at you, and what I'd probably do is go scoot and end up being right behind him and throw down my all around and just wait for him to walk over into my saw blades of death. And so the general charge is really each time I use one of these powers, it helps bring back the other one. And if I time them right, and I've figured out a few different scenarios here, it brings them back to where I really always have them going. Or I might have to go through one little swing, 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 but then I get it back again, and I can go, and I can utilize that for placement and situations like that. So normally in a group like this, because there's a group over there farther away and this one closer guy, I wouldn't be attacking him. I'd go ahead into this guy or this one, and I would start swinging, and as they came at me, then I would ball them up with another run, and then I would hit them again with another encounter, and again with another counter. If I got down to one person, I would hit him with the solo attack like this. Anytime there's a boss or an important person, I go after them with the more solo attack. When do I use my daily here? Well, usually if there's a group like that, and I know there's going to be another group show up, right after I go into them, I'll boom, 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 and then scoot through them, get into that position, and as the other guys are running in, I'll call it out so everybody gets hit with it, and then start throwing down again. And there are points here I'll take a hit, but generally I'm trying to scoot out of every hit, and I might throw something down and then get out of the hit. And of course that's an encounter I throw down, and then I don't get to do the at wills as much, but I scooch and then aim into them, and then 1, 2 is effectively 3 seconds, so you can do another attack right then if you want, or if you need to. Hopefully you're following me. So let's go here to protectors, and let's go to hell pit, and I'll show you kind of in action what I'm talking about, because dummies don't do everything, they don't react right, they don't move around. Though Hell Pit's not really a great way of showing this either. A dungeon would be more appropriate because of the way the mobs come at you, and that's what we're talking about. Hell Pit, they kind of come at you from all directions, but really as you go around the room, it kind of does that effect just about as well, and I can work myself around the room without having to be enraged by using the powers that I do that make me zoom over and hit the guy. And so let's see what we've got here. Before I go, is there anything else I haven't really looked at? And there's powers. I've got my boons, okay? And really in all of these, I ended up getting power in every single one of them that I can get. And I only got enough crit strike, and now this is where these are things that are rating by 250 per rank. So this is what I need to take down just a hair. But I find if I don't have a crown on these things, then it's really borderline, especially if I get a death hit. That's when it's borderline. So keeping it right there is pretty good. And here I've got critical avoidance, which I just had to choose. I also have maximum hit points in every single one. I had to choose 2 in defense, and I think I can take one of those away now because it's like 540 and this is 250 off, so I'll still have 85,000. And combat advantage rating there, and really I can take that down again. But I wonder what to put it in, and I can put it in accuracy and try to get that more right, but that's really meh. It's okay. And so there's not much more I can put it in. I could put it in movement, and already I'm kind of okay in movement. You do want to have demonic mastery during this because you're fighting a lot of these demon characters, but other than that it doesn't matter so much. I do have 3 in companion influence just because I've had to waste some now actually. Hearts here again, and critical severity. You want to have as many as possible, 4 out of 4 on that. And I've got my action point going also on here. And the master one that you choose, I've got Deathly Rage. And so on a kill, I get an increase. So this is not what I had whenever we were doing Tom, where it was just on an encounter chance back here. But on a kill, we've got that. And so that's really it. And so let's dive in here to this pit. It's never too late to turn back. Kind of cool. They make you sign your life away here to go into it. Basically a clause saying that if I die in here, it's not your fault, right? And because this is like pit fighting is basically what it is, but it's pit fighting with demons. Eventually you fight this guy. This is Wilfred, and if you've played the game, right when you very start out, there's this kid named Wilfred, and you save him at the first part, and then later you find out in a couple of dungeons he got trapped by them. Then suddenly here, whoops, you come up against him. So pretty neat. Anyhow, let's go in here and do a little bit of damage, and I'll show you how to do it. Right when it gives you the chance, da-na-na, rock and roll. It won't do it till you walk in. Right whenever it says fight, I throw my artifact out, and I'll start going around running into these guys, and basically every encounter kills them. And so I encounter into them and then use my other powers. If there's somebody behind me, and there's the shield that I can get, so I'm using that to get around and zip and get it around and kill these guys off. If I'd have waited a second right there, I'd have been able to hit every single one of these. Here's where I use my daily. I attack back into it, and because I have 2 of those horns, now after I get a chance, and I don't really need to just yet, I will actually use one of the horns, like right there. There's my daily again, and now it's almost gone, right? But I've used a horn, so it's building up. You don't really want to use them both at the same time and things, but and I'm getting a little low on health. I hit a health bar, then I go ahead and hit that shield. And now if you'll look, I've got a gold bar where my health bar was. and I've got so many health points, they're not going to be able to get through it. And because I've waited a little while, it's going to last into this. And there's another little part right here where a whole group comes out. But if you'll also look, my action points are fixed to go doom, there it goes. But I don't need to use them yet, but I can go right here with that group. If you'll look, I go around through them and past them quite often because that staggers them for a second, and my stagger isn't as much. And depending on if I've got this power right here, it will knock them down, and it gives them a stun effect. Well, I can come around them and do that, and then all of a sudden, they're out of it. They're pretty much like right there, and then use my daily. I also do so whenever I'm going to use my daily. Round complete. Go ahead and hit my horn now, because the other one, it only lasts for about, 45 seconds or so. It builds you back up until you'll see it slowly going up by itself now. When I start to fight, it'll do more. And again, I'll hit my artifact right when I start out. I had a chance to use the other one during the middle of that, and I never did. So I got this whole group right there. As soon as they got grouped up, I used my swipe. Because there was a solo left right there, I did solo, and I didn't do clear the ground. Here I'm doing clear the ground. You can see it. And with this grouping I'm fixing to get into, I'm going to do it too. But also, here's a daily. So you can see how I clear through these guys, and it's really fairly rapid. They don't do very much damage to me, and I don't try to stand in crap just for fun. Although you can a little bit. And I'm going to go over here and get this skull. And this, if y'all have done this, causes a big damage in an area of a meteor storm to come down. And this helps you clear guys out. We'd all rather have the health one, I'm sure. Health or shield. So I can hit all three of these guys at once. I'm not going to do the solo. And every time I hit with an encounter, it gives me that extra boost of damage. So I'm encounter, solo, solo, encounter, at will, encounter, at will. And making sure I stay on that mode pretty much. And in doing so, it allows me to do extra damage. Now, if I've only got one guy, I still use the encounter that's available, because it makes the next one come available. Even though it doesn't look like it has that much time left, if I pace them out right, I actually do have that time left, because when I use one, it gives me speed towards the other. Rarely do I blow them all off at once, and whenever I do, you'll find that that's whenever I use a daily like that. Because I've got, oh, that's what I didn't show in my mount bonuses. One of my mount bonuses is that I've got Calver's Warning, where I receive a buff, Gladiator's Guile, Combat's Maneuver, so I get combat advantage, damage extra. When I use an artifact, receive cooldown, and there it is. And then whenever I've used a daily power, I receive a buff. Actually, everybody did. Shepherd's Devotion, so that's a teamwork kind of thing you've got built in there too. And the extra companion bonus thing I have is in crit severity, like all DPS should be on. You notice here I'm about half dead, but they're not really getting that much damage to me. It takes 2 or 3, and I'll let him hit me once if I can just mow through that whole group again. I'm willing to do that because I can hit a full Hellstone right here and I'm back up to full. The problem is after I hit a Hellstone, it takes me 15 more seconds to get back up. So if I'm in trouble, there's a good place for a daily and a sweeper that kills everybody off. Here's a heart. Now, I have to use that before the next round, but I can try to hold it until I get low, and it'll take and fill me back up and save me my Hellstone, if you will, while I'm working my way through these. Go ahead and do my daily there. And so now I'm out of daily, and I'm 6 minutes and 5 minutes away on both of them, but I was able to use it about twice as normal as I would have until that point. So that's been good. 4 minutes away. But also it's coming back, and I'm at about, 30%, and whenever it gets over 50, 55, I can use it again as needed. It's not like you just throw it out there. It's one of those things where you get a group and you'll throw it out there. They try to surround you. You scoot you out of it, throw that lightning and go with it, right? Solo on this guy. And so I can do it right now if I had to. If they got more surrounded, I would just go ahead and there goes lightning. And you can see I do extra damage and I mow them away pretty good whenever that happens. So it kind of takes out their advantage. They get all this advantage on me and I go, psych, I'm around you. I've got this, I got that. There's my extra shield and I go back because it gives me enough time. I've only got less than half life, and if I let it go 4 more seconds, I won't be full. I go ahead and hit with cube and make it full for myself. And let's go. Call on my daily. So you can see the kind of method I'm using. I'm going around things. I'm trying to get in a strike when I know I'm going to get a hit. Sometimes I take it, but generally I try to get in a hit, bam, and scoot around them, and then come around this side. In that scooting, you'll get a lot of purple ground below them. That's combat advantage. And so I'm constantly trying to do that. And also I'm trying to get in between groups of them whenever I throw my middle button, which is my, oh man, I forget the name of it. But what it does is does this sweeping, and that's really my only non-single attack of my encounters. Although you can do my at-wills in that way, and I do at-wills that are hitting multiples right now. As far as encounters go, the only one that I have that's really group is this one. And I'll use it anyhow like I did right there, and you saw him buying that guy up. But it's really best used in groups. But you don't save it to where you don't have it. You use it whenever you need it, like right there. And what am I in? Round 4 or 5, so it's just about over. So you saw that strike take everybody out. I'm zooming to this guy, so there's ways of doing things. There was a little bit left on that one, so what I did was I used a sweep attack on my at-wills right after I did my encounter on that other guy, so it hit both of them. As soon as that one guy was gone and I only had one guy left, I went back to the other attack that's like there, went back to solo, and I'm all about it. Because there's only one guy there, why still stand and sweep? So it's choice selections like that that help a whole lot. And looking at the situation, some of these times with the game here, it's got to go, you got to go through it a couple of times to see and know where you're at, or you can watch YouTube videos. So I guess that brings us up to our last point, was how this is mod 18B. Because in this mod, what you're doing is something that's really actually less than this. It's really just a encounter. And while they said that they're going to make each round a better thing, and I understand now they've got the CV to keep everybody out thing or whatever, and that caused a lot of trouble. They really almost had it ready to go. Shouldn't have had to do too much. There needs to be game testing always, and I guess if they had something wrong with it or some fluke that people were able to do something weird with, you could blame it on that. But in actuality, I shouldn't have used that then. So now I got another horn back, and the other one's fixing to go. So you can see I'm really keeping a horn double rolling for half of this whole setup here. This is pretty much like a dungeon, but it's all in one room. You're not traveling through it, it's traveling through you. But this is somewhat like this new encounter goes, and it's about Bell. It's an encounter with Bell, who ends up just being a major demon, and you fight one just like that in this whenever you get to the last stages of it, you know, because each time you do it, you start off at a certain stage and get to another stage. And whenever you get stagey, you end up fighting something that's just like it. And you can even solo it, really, but it's best in, apparently, the rewards you get and everything. There's my daily. Shouldn't have really wasted it, but you saw how they just fried, right? So it takes a lot of the fight out of it. It takes a lot of, well, I gotta, save my stuff, or I gotta do this, or I've got to heal myself or do something. And if you'll manage things by doing that, kapow, it makes it pretty easy. I mean, here I am still full at the end of the thing done. And I'll go ahead and hit my other horn now, and it'll fill me all the way up while I'm sitting here waiting, which is pretty neat. Now they got a little dance they do for me, and you're supposed to just totally exit. But this mod that's out right now, it's so there's no new dungeon with it, and they said, like, now they may come out with less mods because they had a deal all along that they were going to do 4 per year, and they were trying to keep that and put in extra events and stuff like that, and that's the original deal. But then they wanted to lower it down, but it was a kind of give and take where they're going to make sure that those mods are doing real good and they don't come out with something screwed up like there was in the one area where everybody could cheat the gypsy lady, and they left it in there, and then they banned everybody for it and stuff, and that's just not cool the way any of that worked out. So they were going to try to make sure they didn't do that, but also the areas and the new stuff is going to be thick, with extra stuff and lore and all those things. It's going to help out, and there'll also be small, though discernible, things that you can get there that's going to make it worth your while, bud. And so let's go ahead and get out of here while I'm talking. And so here's their first chance to do so, and you could say, well, they're not really kicked into that yet. That's what they said they're going to be coming up, but they acted like this is encompassed in it, and they showed it on the timeline map. Well, this bell is what it is in here. Bell, the demon, it's actually goes with ball, and that's I do ancient culture studies and everything, and Baal, the Canaanite god, and all the things about him. So I thought, wow, this ought to be something cool, and I wonder if he can be the highlight at the end of a dungeon. How much lore will they put in this? Because Dungeons and Dragons is famous for putting in lore that's all about ancient things that you know about that. And I even do videos about it, how Orcus and all these things that were talked about by ancient people are all in here, and you're fighting them. You got to cash it in after you do it. Made that mistake the first day and didn't go back. Problem. So but this here's a legendary warhorse you can actually get from this. So it's the reason a lot of people are doing this, is that you can get a lot of things from him. In fact, we'll just look at him real quick. But this so you can get upgrade tokens for your companions and things like that if you need to. All the different seals that you need to upgrade certain things. But you're wasting a lot. I got 45 now, but 25 and so on. So it's kind of like the weekly ones you do that are upstairs that you go and get and cash in onto her. Through the challenge, you can even get legendary insignia packs, so that's real good. But these rage deals are incredibly good, with you getting extra damage and extra damage reduction for tanks and so on. You can get Prez wards, but why waste it on that? Now for participation, you can get coal wards with 1 or even a greater bag of holding, but for 2 you can get a whole runic bag, and if you'll save up and get all 5, you get a golden warhorse. I think I've already used my other one last time just to get a free coal ward, because they jumped up the price right then and ticked me off. Now they're almost double what that is. So anyhow, there's 17 days of it, so it's going to build up a whole bunch, and after a week worth of then you go through a secondary thing. It's a little tougher, and they give you a little more and a little more and build up. So it's nice, and it's some kind of grind thing, and at least it's semi-tough. I mean, for people that aren't built up well, it's tough to carry you all the way through to each one of the end rounds and stuff with him. My problem is they're kind of doing something like that in the new area, and it's really like the dailies that you can get, and so there's not much that change, and people have been kind of ticked off about it. But let's see whenever it comes out, and we'll take a look at that. So y'all take care. and we'll get on from there. Hopefully this helped you out. Leave a comment downstairs. Like, share, and subscribe. Peace.